Hi, folks. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Randy Blatt. I am a customer success manager here with Jazz. Want to take the first opportunity here to thank everybody for joining the webinar, spending some time with us, and you get to listen to me for the next 45 minutes or so. First thing I just want to say is please ask questions. Feel free to reach out with any questions you have using the GoToWebinar control panel on the right side of your screen. I'm actually here with Lila today. I want to thank Lila for also answering the questions that you all submit, so we can kind of tag team this and make the most out of everybody's time. Focus of today, we are going to talk about assessments within Jazz. Very, very important, extremely critical in making sure that you're hiring the best candidate for the position. And we've got a lot of options within Jazz for evaluating and ultimately deciding who to hire for each position. So we'll get started here with a little slideshow. I love slideshows. And we'll start with the really boring stuff. Assessments are defined as the evaluation or estimation of the nature, quality, or ability of someone or something. In this case, we are going to focus on the someone. So that's the boring part. Now we'll get to the fun part. We've got some memes here. Everybody loves a good meme. Toy Story, believe it or not, is still my favorite movie of all time. Way above any kind of epics like Gladiator or anything like that. So assessments everywhere, and a little reference to a little shout out to Office Space and Lumber here. So we'll move on. You're welcome for the corny joke. What we're going to cover today, we are going to talk about, first and foremost, we're going to touch on the admin tab and how you create templates for all of these assessments. These specific assessments we're going to touch on are questionnaires, interview guides, evaluations, star ratings, and we will touch briefly on third-party integrations we offer, or third-party assessment integrations specifically. HackerRank, SparkHire, GoodHire, Orico, and TalentWise are our three background check providers as well. So we'll touch on that because a background check is ultimately a form of assessment on a candidate. I would expect about 45 minutes to an hour. Hopefully we have some really good interactive questions that we can basically go over while we're on the webinar today. But you will have obviously the opportunity to ask these questions at all times. We can do a quick Q&A session at the end if necessary. After the webinar, you're going to receive a slide deck, basically these exciting slides. And I know everybody just wants that Toy Story meme, so I'll send that out to everybody. And also a recording of this webinar that you could share with your team. You can take home to your spouse, your children, so on and so forth, and they can enjoy listening to me for about 45 minutes. One quick mention, I always have to throw in the obligatory support center reference here. Feel free to reach out to us anytime. support@jazz.co is the best way to reach out to us. On your launch page in Jazz, we've got a number of helpful resources there, including a link directly to submit a case to our support team on the right side, the purple button there. So let's get started. Let's use assessments in Jazz to help you all eliminate bad hires. One number that I like to throw out there, and this is something that kind of amazed me when I heard it, is a recent Career Builder survey said that one bad hire can cost a company up to $56,000. That's pretty impressive and a huge number that you ultimately do not ever want to have to face. You don't want to just throw away $56,000 or any money at that. So let's focus on how we can help to eliminate those bad hires. Alrighty, so let's dive in here. I'm in Jazz, I'm in a test account here. The first thing that I want to touch on is going to be our admin tab. I'm sure mostly all of you are familiar with our admin tab. This is where you're going to go to create templates and ultimately create global settings for your jobs and make your life a lot easier moving forward by applying these templates to future positions that you open. So the first point I want to make is regarding questionnaires. So we're going to click down into questionnaires, and I'm not going to actually go through and create any questionnaires. I'm just going to show you where you can access this information. I want to dive deeper into the actual application of using the questionnaires and the evaluations and other assessment tools within Jazz. So under questionnaires, you can see if I scroll down, I've created a software engineer questionnaire. And this can be attached in one of two ways. I can attach it directly to our job application. So when candidates apply, they're initially required to fill out these responses. I can also send a questionnaire after a candidate applies, so that the initial process, the initial application process up front is very simple, very straightforward. There's only a few questions that a candidate has to answer, and thus increasing the likelihood of candidates applying to that job, specifically passive candidates, which are generally well qualified and some of the best candidates out there. Next, we're going to look at evaluation templates. Again, very straightforward. Just simply clicking the green Create Evaluation button here will allow you to create the evaluation. Again, I've gone in beforehand and proactively created one under Software Engineer, which we will kind of walk through all of the touch points on this when we dive a little deeper into evaluations. Integrations. The integrations, I guess I can touch right now. Under admin, if you see there's on the white bar across the top here, you've got a section for integrations. If I click on this, this is going to link me to all of the possible integrations that Jazz offers. The ones I want to touch on today are, the first is HackerRank. HackerRank is a great coding test platform, a great way to test, obviously the aptitude of a candidate for an engineering position, a coding position, development position. There's, as you can see, 30 programming languages available for testing. It's an awesome website. I've tried to go in and complete some of these Java tests and other HackerRank coding tests, and I've failed miserably, which is why I am not involved with coding. But a great way to, to test candidates, find out if they can handle the job and if they're going to be able to ultimately build out and improve your platform. The next assessment integration is SparkHire. And SparkHire is really awesome because it gives you the ability to video interview candidates. Specifically, their main selling point is the ability to one-way video interview candidates. And what I mean by that is, what you can do is basically type out a set of questions, send the questions to the candidate. The candidate can then, on their own time, record themselves answering these questions and ultimately send the video back to you when they're done answering the questions. So it's a lot of people say it's kind of the next wave of the future in replacing phone screens, because this gives you the ability to actually see people's movements, people's reactions. Paints a little bit clearer picture of the candidate, how they respond, and how they speak. So SparkHire is again a great way to use video interviewing to your advantage. And another good use case for SparkHire would be if you're hiring across the country or globally. A good way to kind of conduct a face-to-face interview over the internet. The next couple of topics I want to cover are surrounding background checks. We offer 3 different background check assessments in Jazz. Orico is our first, TalentWise is the second, and GoodHire is the third. With Orico and TalentWise, we actually require you to go in and connect or sync your accounts with Jazz. With GoodHire, you can go directly through Jazz into GoodHire to purchase the background check, and there's no integration required. It's all basically built into Jazz with GoodHire. Background checks, again, very important in identifying candidates that are well qualified, safe candidates to hire. And if you hire a candidate that obviously has a history of making poor decisions, those decisions will likely continue in their employment with your company. So background checks are important and a good way to kind of weed out candidates that are not going to be great fits or a great fit for your company, for a position in your company. So those are integrations. I jumped around a little bit already. Again, keep feeding questions over to Lila. She's here answering questions. We've gotten some great ones so far. And if we have some really interactive questions, I'll go ahead and bring them up during the webinar today. All right, so we've covered integrations. Let's go back onto our jobs page and let's go over questionnaires, attaching a questionnaire to a job, and also sending a questionnaire after a candidate applies. The first thing I want to do, I'm going to focus on our front-end web developer position today. And the first thing I want to do is edit my job application. So when editing my job here, I can scroll down a little bit. I can pick and choose my canned questions if I want to require, or if I want to ask folks for references and require that they provide references, I can do that. That's going to attach it to our questionnaire, our application here. So under the questionnaire section, I can go in and create a questionnaire on demand, which is a good option. If you don't have something kind of templated at this point, you can go in and just create a custom questionnaire on the fly. In this case, as I mentioned earlier, I have a software engineer questionnaire that I want to attach to this position. So when I do that, you're going to see that now on my job application preview screen on the left side, you're now able to see the questions from that questionnaire that will be required of the candidate to answer. So I attach the questionnaire and I'm done editing my job. And now I just want to take a look to see what it looks like from a candidate standpoint. So I click on the job, I scroll down on the right side, and again, here's where you're going to see the custom questions that we've just added to this questionnaire. So a great way, again, a few questions, adding a few questions to the application is something we recommend doing. Going in and adding 20 questions or making for a big long list for the applicant to apply can become intimidating, and a lot of times applicants will pass or basically choose not to apply because of the time, the dedication of time required to fill out the application. So that is the first way to add a questionnaire to our job. Now, the second way to add a questionnaire is to use questionnaires in Jazz. The second way is to basically send one after a candidate applies. So we're going to scroll down here and we're going to use Chuck Norris today. We've had a lot of really great applicants recently. Chuck Norris, Jean-Claude Van Damme, Cindy Lou Who, so we're pretty excited about that. But Chuck Norris, we want to basically send him an additional questionnaire and ask him a few more questions to ultimately decide if he's going to be, or if we want to bring him in for a phone screen, or if he's going to be a good fit for this position. So in the candidate profile, I have a drop down here to the left of the reject button. And I've got the option to send a questionnaire. So I click that. I choose my questionnaire from a drop-down list. Because I already have the software engineer position or the software engineer questionnaire attached to this job, I'm going to choose an alternate questionnaire. We'll say engineer. My subject line, this is all customizable. I can customize the subject, the body of my email. I can change that and basically make it whatever I please. But ultimately, I go in, I click Send Questionnaire to Chuck, and that questionnaire has been emailed to Chuck so that he can click and answer the questions. Now, note on the right side here of Chuck's profile, you're going to see where we have these questionnaires attached to Chuck. So what I can do is I can go in and view completed questionnaires. So hypothetically here, we're going to say that Chuck went in and completed this software engineering questionnaire. So if I click on the eyeball, it's going to give me the responses to his questions. Now, if Chuck's taking too long to complete the questionnaire, I can use the reminder feature here that basically resends the questionnaire out to Chuck and just lets him know, hey, you haven't filled this out yet. Please fill out the questionnaire. And you'll see that you get a nice little success message or reminder here saying that the email was sent successfully. So again, questionnaire is a great way to find out additional information on the candidate and ultimately make the best decision. Now, one thing that's really cool about Jazz is what we can do is we can actually filter out candidates based on the answers to their questionnaires. So let me show you that functionality. I click on candidates here, and I'm going to go into the search bar, and then I'm going to choose the advanced search feature here. Now our job is front-end web developer. We're going to say we're going to look at candidates in any status. And then I've got this field for custom question filters. So I'm going to take the engineer position, or I'm sorry, in this case, the software engineer questionnaire that we've completed. And I'm going to add a filter onto this questionnaire. So I want to take a look at, for example, how many years experience do you have coding? And I want to see anybody that has 0 years experience coding, because ultimately, I apologize, but you're not gonna get a job with us. We want some experienced coders. So I select that filter. I can also add additional filters if necessary. And then I search my candidates. Now, once I search here, I've got 2 responses. So both of these people, Dale and Jean-Claude, both submitted responses to the questionnaire saying that they have 0 years of experience. So, excuse me, again, we ultimately don't want to hire these people. Now what I can do is select the checkboxes on the left side here and complete a batch action on these candidates. So I can scroll down, click on change status, take them from a new stage and take them into an underqualified stage or a not hired stage, and click go. Now I've got automated emails set up to be sent out to these applicants. So once I move them into this stage here, they're going to get rejection letters, which is fine. We're comfortable with that. So we're going to go ahead and confirm. You do have the ability to uncheck the box if you don't want the candidates to receive that rejection letter right away. You can uncheck this box. But in this case, we're happy with it. We're going to confirm the stage. And now my candidates are dispositioned into a not hired status for whatever job they have applied to. So that is questionnaires, creating them, sending them, and ultimately searching for them. Again, questions, send them over. We're getting some good ones in here. The next topic we are going to focus on is evaluations. We dive back into our front-end web developer position. All right, and let's go back down to Chuck Norris here. And we're going to, again, take a hypothetical example here, but we're going to move Chuck Norris down into the phone screen stage, for example. And we're not going to send out these automated helpers. And now in the phone screen stage, instead of using an interview guide, we want to actually use an evaluation. So what I do is I go under assessments, and under my assessments here, I've actually got one completed already. Let me just delete that guy. So under assessments, I can complete an evaluation for the candidate here, and I can click add evaluation. Make this a little bigger. It's going to be regarding this job, and then I can select my evaluation template. In this case, I've created the software engineer template. And now I can go through and basically rate the candidate in a number of different ways. I have 1 to 10 scales. I have yes, no scales. A lot of different options for rating the candidates. I can also attach a weight to each question. So if I feel that one category or one response is more important than another, I can add a higher weight onto that response. So in this case, we're going to say that Chuck has, he scores an 8 out of 10 on Java abilities. Critical thinking, he's not that sharp, so we're going to say a 2. We're just going to type a note here, a comment, and he lacks critical thinking skills, which is not a good quality. Scrum, he's a great scrummer. Great scrummer, that's good. He's very good with Scrum ideology, and so we're gonna rate him a 10 at that. And nerd status, he's not a nerd. We'll say he could be more nerdy. Electric guitar skills, he's got great electric guitar skills. He's basically like Axl Rose. Axl Rose status. I don't even think Axl Rose plays the guitar, but we'll use that. Finally, we can add some final comments, some finishing comments. I'm still laughing about Axl Rose. How about slash status? How's that? Additional comments, final comments on the candidate, the evaluation. Ultimately, if you think he's going to be a good fit, we can put that here. So I save my evaluation. It tells me it's been saved. And I close the box, and this is where I can see my evaluation scores. So you're going to see 2 scores here, and the top score is basically an aggregate score. So if you have 7 people that go in and complete evaluations for Chuck here, you're going to get an aggregate score at the top. So it's actually going to average all of those scores together. Another thing I can do here is I can also view the details of the evaluation. So if I click the View Details button, you'll see that I have my comments here. He's got slash status, and ultimately the summary comments at the bottom. So benefits of evaluations, you have the ability to rank or rate the candidates on different scales, 1 to 10 scales, yes, no scales, etc. And you've also got weights attached to each question. Finally, another big benefit is you get the aggregate scoring with multiple folks filling out evaluations. It's going to aggregate those scores. So that is evaluations. Let's see here. Keep firing away questions if you have any. The next topic we are going to go to is star ratings. Now, star ratings is really, really straightforward. Basically, it's very simple to rate a candidate with a star rating, and it's also really simple to search for candidates based on star rating. So I'll show you that functionality here. So let's go back to Chuck Norris. He's currently in a phone screen stage. And with Chuck, we like what we see in Chuck. We've got the star rating system right here. I'm going to rate Chuck as a five-star applicant. He's great. So it's as simple as really going in, selecting the 5 stars. Not much to talk about there, very straightforward. But what's great about star ratings is you have the ability to search by candidates based on star rating. So I go back into my candidates tab. I click on my search icon. I can go to advanced search, back to my front-end web developer, select the number of stars. I want to pull candidates that have this number of stars. And then I search the candidates, and it pulls up Chuck Norris. It shows us that he's got a 5-star rating. Any other candidates that were rated 5 stars would appear here as well. So a great way to again, kind of assess a candidate just on a general, star rating system. Very popular amongst our customers. We have a lot of customers that really enjoy using the 5-star rating system and ultimately assessing candidates that way. All right, so the next form of assessment, and I honestly think I kind of saved the best for last, but interview guides within Jazz are really, really important. It's a great way to stay collaborative with your team and capture feedback, notes, responses from interviews, and house it in Jazz. So with that being said, we've got some interview guides created already and attached to our workflow stages. So I'm going to go back to Chuck here. And we have Chuck in a phone screen stage. So at this point, we ultimately want to get Chuck on the phone, ask him some questions, and identify if he's going to be a good fit to move into the next stage of the process, or if we're ultimately going to want to hire Chuck. So I go in, I click on my phone screen tab, or I'm sorry, my interviews tab, and I now see that the phone screen interview is generated and active for this workflow stage. A couple of things to note here. If I click on the drop down, I've got a couple of options, and one, I can schedule my interview. So if I have if my Jazz account's linked to GCal, Google Calendar, or Outlook, I can go in here, I can identify available times for my colleagues, and ultimately schedule an interview with the candidate that works best for myself and the members of my team. Another thing that's really great, a great functionality that we offer here is the ability to link to the interview guide. And something that's really nifty about this is how you can take this link, I can copy this link and paste it and email it, message it to anybody, even folks that do not have a Jazz account. And that gives them the ability to follow this link, go into Jazz, and ultimately complete an interview guide. They don't have to be a Jazz user or a Jazz administrator. This is a great use case for this, is like a one-off example. If you have just one person that a hiring manager wants to bring in on an interview, and you only want them to interview one person one time, so it doesn't really make sense to add them as a Jazz user. So at this point, we're ready to start our interview. So I'm going to click the little bump out to start the interview. And now I've got my interview guide pulled up. I enter my name, I enter my email address, and I go ahead and click Start Interview. So a couple of cool features of our interview guides. On the left side here, we've got the ability to view the resume of the candidate. So I can click View Resume, and I can take a look at the resume. We've also recently added this functionality to pop the resume out, and it pulls up a responsive modal that I can shrink, I can resize, I can move around my screen. And what's really great about this is you can shrink down your interview guide, have your interview guide on the right side of the screen, and the resume on the left. So you can constantly refer to the candidate's resume. The next button is the View Job Details button. This basically pulls up the details of the job, pretty self-explanatory, any kind of job description you've entered, qualifications, responsibilities, certain benefits that you're going to be offering to the person that you hire, so on and so forth. So at this point, we're going to pretend like we've got Chuck Norris on the phone. It's a great Thursday afternoon. Chuck Norris is on the phone with us. We're ultimately going to go through and we are going to complete the responses to the questions. What's great about interview guides is you can be as general with your questions as just capturing pros and cons of the candidate, or you can be as specific as asking specific questions, behavioral questions, situational questions, and actually providing a solid response to those questions. So as we're going through the phone interview with Chuck, we say he's well-spoken, smart, tech-savvy, great with C++, and he has great ninja skills. Oops. Now we have, with each question each interview question we respond to, we have the ability to rate those questions: poor, acceptable, strong. In this case, we're going to say strong. Cons, we think we're just going to say he's not a great critical thinker, and so on and so forth. My creativity is going out the window. I apologize. It's getting later in the day here, but not a great critical thinker. And we're going to say that his response, or the cons of Chuck, it's poor. We're not real psyched about his cons. How many years of Java experience does he have? He has infinite years of experience. There's a good Chuck Norris joke, but we're going to say he has 6+, and we like that, so that's a strong answer. He left his previous position, wasn't too happy with his manager. So that's a little bit of a skeptical response, so we're going to say that's acceptable. Why do you want to work here? Because I do. And in this case, because these are optional responses or optional ratings of the responses, we're going to leave this one blank just for an example purpose. I can also go in and on demand add questions. So if I want to know, when can Chuck start? When can you start? I can go ahead and add that question, attach a date field, and we could say, Chuck's able to start on May 1st or May 2nd. So I've got my interview guide completed. We're off the phone with Chuck. I go and I wrap up. I put all of my additional notes in here. I'm happy with all of my responses. I'm going to click the complete interview button. It's going to prompt me to save everything, which I'm going to do. I'm going to save all. And then I've got just a pass or fail verbiage, basically a two-way option to either pass the candidate and say we want to move this candidate forward, or fail the candidate and say thanks but no thanks. We've also got the ability to ask or answer why we're making this decision. In this case, he would be a great fit. And once everything's completed, I wrap up the interview. I click complete interview. So at this point, actually, I don't know why that click the interview failed. Hang on one second. I go back, I'm going to pass them. Apologize for that. There we go. All right, so Chuck passed. We can see that I completed the interview guide on March 31st, which is today. If I want to go back and adjust any of my answers or add any information, I can click the edit button, the pencil, and I can go in and add additional information. What's great from a collaborative standpoint is I have the ability to go in and view other folks' responses. So just for example's sake, I could see here that Lila on March 29th went in, completed an in-person interview. I know it doesn't necessarily line up, but I could go in, I can see Lila's responses and basically see what her feedback is on Chuck. I can also go in, click the eyeball on mine, and view my feedback. The last thing to note about interviews, the final note that I left when I completed the interview is going to appear under our discussion tab. So along with any kind of feedback that's provided by any of your colleagues, any of your coworkers, hiring managers, etc., we can also capture the final response to that interview feedback here as well. All right, so that is going to do it. If anybody has any additional questions, please feel free to shoot them over. Just trying to think if there's anything I forgot to mention here today. So one thing just to wrap up, I do want to mention our support case, or I'm sorry, our support knowledge base here. If you click on the circle with the question mark in it, you have the ability to go to our knowledge base. You can contact support using the contact support button here. You can also search for specific functionalities or areas of that you have a question concerning. How do I schedule interviews? What are interviews? A great resource and a great place to find answers to your questions. Also keep in mind that we have a really great support team here. And with that being said, feel free to reach out to support@jazz.co at any time, and we're happy to help you out. And we actually did get a question here that that Lila's going to address. So Lila, if you want to go ahead and jump on.
Yeah, I wanted to just kind of address some of the questions. You guys know I've been responding to you individually, but I wanted to address some of the questions that came up because a lot of you might be having the same thoughts. One of them was, what is the value or the difference between using interview guides versus evaluations? And I just want to talk a little bit about that because evaluations are more of a numbers-based kind of hard-line assessment of a candidate, while interview guides are more of a free-form kind of feedback area, and it just kind of depends on how your hiring process works. So if your hiring managers prefer a more hard-nosed approach to looking at your candidates and assessing them and saying, okay, they need to be scored on these individual metrics, and this is the way that it is easiest for us to respond and kind of evaluate these people, assessments might be the right tool for you. If you have a more conversational type assessment process where you like to discuss the candidates, your team likes to come together afterwards and give the thumbs up, thumbs down, and you have a more kind of team-oriented, discussion-oriented interview and assessment process, an interview guide might be a better fit for you. It doesn't mean that you have to use one or the other either. You can use both in conjunction. In fact, many people do. A lot of people like to have the interview guide, for the in-person interview and just putting the general feedback in there and putting their notes, and then having an assessment as a follow-up, just an overall score so that they can see everybody's scores all at once. Another question that came up, that comes up a lot, is whether or not you can set users to be able to not view other users' assessments in the system. So if I go to the assessments tab here, for example, and I go down to evaluations, you can see if I had multiple evaluations here that other users would be able to see them by default. So as an admin and owner, so if you're not the owner of your Jazz account, then you won't see this tab, but this privileges tab is managed by your owner here. And you can deselect the ability or select the ability to restrict users to only view the applicant evaluations they create. So if you think that other users going through and seeing the results of their other hiring managers would be a little bit misleading or kind of influence them, you can have this so they can only come in and see their evaluations. Someone also brought up the idea of references as an assessment, and mentioning that they use a reference guide as an interview guide and attach it to the workflow, which is a great idea. A lot of people use that, using an interview guide to enter in your references information. That way you can kind of have all your references in one spot, all the feedback, and then whether or not they passed, failed, all within the system. So that's a great tip as well, just from another customer here. Another thing that was brought up is we try to interview to figure out cultural fit. Do they fit our corporate values? So that's a perfect way to kind of use an interview guide if you want a more more of a discussion. You can certainly use an assessment for both of those tools. You can have culture fit as an assessment in an evaluation. So culture fit, if it's extremely important to you guys, you can have it as part of your score and your overall evaluation of that candidate. But then in the interview guide, it might give some more details as to why you think or didn't think that they were a culture fit. So that's an example of how they can kind of be used together.
Awesome. Thank you, Lila. Is there any other questions that have come in? Anything else that you want to address?
Yeah, there's a lot of great questions coming in. Actually, you guys have some great ideas. So one other question that came in was, management wants to be able to have a numerical scoring for questionnaires so you can kind of see a ranking. So, situational, behavioral, and experience type questions. I honestly think an assessment would be a perfect fit for this because it does have that overall score. Like if I go into the candidate, if I go into Chuck and I go back to his evaluation here, you can create an evaluation to mimic whatever skills you're looking for, and then it has an overall score. So if you wanted to create individual evaluations for situational or behavioral or experience, like any of these types of questions, and then they would have an overall score. You can also see like an average of all your users' scores. So if you're really looking for like a score-based metric on a particular candidate, an evaluation would work really well for you. There are some other questions in here that I'll get into to individually, but I just wanted to kind of address some of the bigger themes in between evaluations and interview guides. And if you guys did want to get any information on some of the integrations that we talked about, HackerRank, SparkHire, or the background check services, please just email webinars@jazz.co or support@jazz.co and just say, hey, I need to get some pricing or I need to get some information. All of them are separate subscriptions from Jazz, so it's an integration between another service and Jazz. So you can get that pricing, and a lot of them have deals if you're coming from Jazz. So it's definitely worth it to check it out for sure.
Awesome. Thank you, Lila. Appreciate you helping out, answering some questions, and thank you everybody for asking some great questions. Again, if you didn't get your question answered directly here, we will follow up, and you also receive a follow-up email with a recording of this session. I want to thank everybody again for joining. I hope it was beneficial for everybody. Feel free to attend our webinars in the future. We have a lot of customer-led webinars as well. So definitely do not hesitate to sign up for all of our future webinars. Thank you again, everybody. Appreciate your time today. If there's anything you need, feel free to reach out to us, and we're happy to help wherever we can. Take care. Have a great Thursday afternoon.